better result
I see.
when they get that guidance.
You know, Judge Sexton, I have to ask because we're fortunate here in DuPage County. There's no question we live in an affluent county. But I think there is a misimpression, and I wonder if I could get your thoughts on this. There's some kind of misimpression that domestic violence doesn't happen in DuPage County. What are your thoughts on that?
We set 25 trials a day in this courtroom, which is a huge number of trials.
Yes.
It crosses every socioeconomic group in our county, every ethnic group. There is no profile on a domestic violence situation. And I think Amy could speak to that.
Yeah, one of the services that we provide is we have a partnership with the police jurisdictions in DuPage County, and they agree that whenever they go and respond to a domestic incident, they will call our hotline and make a report about that domestic incident so that we can do outreach and provide services and information to the identified victim. We take an average of 600 calls from police officers per month. And what we know from national statistics is that the number of police calls represents about 10% of the total incidence of domestic violence. So those 600 calls a month are really just the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many, many more incidents that are happening that are not resulting in a call to the police and that therefore are hidden.
Very interesting. Yeah. Judge Sexton, tell me about the litigants that you see in your courtroom. What's the breakdown between the genders?
I would say the majority are women, but also the Domestic Violence Act also covers caregivers and elderly people or disabled people, so we do see that. We see homosexual and gay relationships come in.
Yes.
Roommates who have no family relationship are also covered.
Yes.
So we have a very diverse group, and they are from, as I said, every race, ethnicity. No one escapes domestic violence.
Right. No, that's my point really in the intro. You know, I don't think anybody is immune, are they? As you've said, it really does cross all boundaries, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And within the family, siblings, parents and children. It's not just in dating relationships or marriages, things like that.
Right.
And they're very often in divorce cases. We do see them.
Okay, excuse me.
Okay.
Let me take a break here because you've hit on a very important point, and that is, again, exactly what constitutes domestic violence. I think it's something much more than just physical violence, isn't it? Yes. So let's take a brief break here. Please come back. We will be joined with Circuit Court Clerk Chris Kaczarubis, who will give us some hands-on advice on how to handle this. Thank you, and return soon. Hello and welcome back to Legal Action. When we went to break, we were talking with Judge Sexton about the type of litigants, that is, the people that she sees come before her every day. And we're going to go back to Judge Sexton in just a moment to explore that further. But first of all, I would like to introduce and welcome most heartily our DuPage County Circuit Court Clerk, Chris Kaczarubis. Chris is here tonight. We're going to go to him in just a minute and be talking at great length about what is available to us, each of us in the community through the Circuit Court Clerk's office. There's been a lot of activity done there, a lot of focus in this area. But for the time being, I'd like to go back to you, Judge Sexton, if we could for just a moment, because I think this is an important point. If you find a litigant before you, that is, a person comes before you and a person is claiming to have been abused or suffered some other form of domestic violence, and we'll get into those other forms like stalking and things like that. But if there is a divorce case going on, Judge Sexton, tell me, how does that affect your approach to the case?
Okay. Particularly in orders of protection, the judge will look very closely at those cases to make sure that there is no ulterior motive for them to be there to try and get an order of protection for something that they might not be able to get quickly in the divorce case. And the Act provides that domestic violence cases should be heard, I think, by the divorce judge in those cases, and they will actually be transferred to the divorce judge. However, if there is a very serious problem that needs immediate attention, an emergency order of protection can be entered in that case without it going to the divorce judge. In the criminal case, again, you're always looking to see, is there an ulterior motive in a custody battle, in a visitation battle? Are you trying to make this other person look bad just for purposes of that? So we really look closely at the divorce cases in domestic violence.
I think that's important. It is a factor, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And you know, that's a good segue for us to turn to Tom Else. Tom, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming this evening.
You're welcome,
and thank
Susan.
you very much for all the help that you've given us in developing this important program. Tom, you've heard Judge Sexton, and you've heard her say that if a couple is involved in a divorce, that is at least a consideration for her when the parties are standing in her courtroom. Now, I know that you focus your practice, a large part of your practice, in family law and matrimonial law. So can you tell me then what would happen? What should a person do? What if I think I'm being I'm in a violent relationship? It might not be a physically violent relationship, but I think it feels abusive. And I call you to talk about that. How would you advise me?
Well, the first thing I would advise someone, if they think they're being abused, if it takes the form of physical abuse, is get to a safe place, get away from the abuser, contact the local police who are very experienced in handling situations like this. But as Judge Sexton pointed out, it can take the form of stalking, it can take the form of telephone harassment, and other things. It can be financial harassment that people undergo that could be the subject of an order of protection. So if they're able to, I strongly suggest that they talk to an attorney. We have fine attorneys in DuPage County. The DuPage County Bar Association has the lawyer referral service. It has numerous very hard-working attorneys that deal with these issues all the time, and that could help someone decide whether or not they think they should obtain an order of protection, and if so, if it should be on an emergency basis, or it should be with notice. It could be part of a divorce case or other matters such as that.
Right. I think that's a very critical point, isn't it? That a domestic violence case does not necessarily have to involve physical violence. We're also talking about stalking laws, yes?
That's correct.
And stalking can take many forms. Can you give our viewers some suggestions or illustrations, perhaps, of what might be considered domestic violence that isn't actual physical violence?
Well, telephone harassment could be one of those. If someone's contacting someone 100, 200 times a day at their work or at their home, making their lives extremely unpleasant, that constitutes telephone harassment.
And that's protected by the Act, is it?
That could be one of the things. Stalking, if someone is following someone, appearing at their works, waiting for them outside their home in the morning. Obviously, that's a very frightening situation, and that's one of the things that an order of protection can attempt to prevent.
Interesting. So just exactly what does an order of protection provide? Let's say that you do speak to your client and you believe that there is definitely a case for Judge Sexton here, so you take the case and let's say you appear before Judge Sexton. She grants the order of protection.